again today. For those of you that are thinking that my cat hasn't moved much since my last video, the reason for that is because behind this sofa is the radiator. And as I've said, England is very, very cold right now, and she is a snuggly warm kitty and she likes to be up there. That is her spot. That is her place. As you can see, Thunderbird 4 has been kicked out of the way because both of them are up there all the time and they're having a little stretch. So yeah, she's warm kitty. Warm kitty. Okay, today we're going to be talking about the 7 basic plots. This subject is a little bit controversial in some ways, as many will argue with the points that are made, but I thought I'd include them because when I was taught them, they made perfect sense and they helped the whole class to identify the type of story that we were actually writing. And I think that's the most important part of it. It's really, really important to discover, probably even before you start to plot out your book. Because knowing the type of story and the general structure that they usually take will actually make the construction of your story so much easier. So that's one of the reasons why I thought I would include them, because it's just, you know, it's something that makes it a little bit easier to kind of get your head around what you're doing. The theory goes that there are only ever 7 basic plots for stories. 7 in the entire world. They all come, they've been mixed and matched and they come in different forms, and you might not immediately think that it's that kind of plot, but it is. So every story that you can think of, any story, will fall into at least one of these categories. Though more often they are a mixture of like 2 or 3 of them, but they will contain some elements of this within them. The plots are Overcoming the Monster, Rags to Riches, The Quest, Voyage and Return, Rebirth, and comedy, which they include romance for some strange reason, and tragedy. Okay, so we're going to look at them all a little bit more in depth, just so that you kind of got a clue what I'm talking about here. Overcoming the Monster. This might have you conjuring up visions of a snarling beast looming over like a fair maiden who's swooning and screaming for her knight in shining armour to come and save her. And yeah, that's fine. If that's how your story's going, you know, you do you. It's worked for a lot of people. And if you do have a physical monster terrifying a village, you do you, dude. But as a plot, it's actually a lot broader than that. Monsters can take many, many forms. They could be a physical threat, like a bad guy, or it could be an evil boss, or an enemy, or an ex-partner, or even an ex-friend, or someone. Or even something more symbolic, like the badness of society, or even mankind itself, or an organisation, a political party, maybe a group of, like a religious group that's causing some kind of crap in your life. That all is included in Overcoming the Monster. An Overcoming the Monster story, as with all of the plots, usually follows a kind of basic formula. And although it is easily moved around to make the story your own, it still is a basic formula recipe. It starts with the creature itself tormenting and torturing its prey. So that could be like the boss picking on the young inexperienced intern, or a nasty teacher bullying the class, something like that. Then comes the call, which is when the hero hears of this wickedness and he's determined to come and save the day. This could be someone in the office overhearing the nasty things that the poor sobbing intern has been said, or one adventurous member of the class decides that enough is enough, this evil teacher must be stopped, kind of like Matilda in a way, you know, Roald Dahl's Matilda, where they take out Miss Trunchbull so that the school can actually blossom and they can have niceness going on. There will be usually some kind of brief first confrontation where the hero and the monster will meet face to face for the first time. Then there is often a period within the story that's referred to as the dream state, which is where everything seems to be going okay for our hero, but then it quickly turns into a nightmare with another confrontation, which the hero shows every likelihood of actually losing. And finally, victory, usually including a lesson of some kind, which is designed to make the reader think about the moral of the story. Rags to Riches and comedy romance are often sort of blended together. We'll often see a small insignificant individual who will step forward and become our hero. Like the nerdy best friend in a high school drama who turns out to be like the perfect person for our main character all along. Our unfortunate and reluctant hero will have been treated badly by those around him, like friends and family, society, and is often orphaned by at least one parent. This gives them some vulnerability and odds to overcome, because we do love that in a story, don't we? We love people overcoming the odds and sort of bettering themselves. It's believed that Cinderella is the oldest rags to riches tale, with thousands of different versions out known today. You know, the oldest dating back to the 9th century, so this is like a hugely old story. The unfortunate hero is usually the youngest child, one that's shown during the story to be growing up and to mature by the end of it. There's usually a part of the story where there is some kind of crisis, where everything is going wrong, but in the end everything works itself out and changes for the better. It's often paired with romance because it's a good formula, it's a good story. We as readers like the thought of a humble hero being the one to get the love interest rather than the rich, arrogant rival. You know, think Beauty and the Beast, Gaston, that kind of thing. Aladdin is a perfect example of both plots mixing together. You've got an orphaned boy who steals to survive, getting his big break and meeting the girl of his dreams. But then just when things start to come up roses for Aladdin, he's knocked back down, having to find the guts and determination to keep fighting, clawing his way back to win the heart of the princess and defeat the bad guy. This is the kind of story that we as readers love. We love to see that someone that doesn't have everything going for them has a chance. No type of story is better known than The Quest. Some of our most beloved stories, like Treasure Island, Lord of the Rings and the Holy Grail, are all a quest. The story itself can take the form of a physical journey, where the hero is actually travelling from one place to another, or more of a mental journey, a voyage of self-discovery, if you will. Maybe one relating to their mental or physical health, self-improvement, or some other kind of life goal. When looking at the story, the goals are usually pretty simple. Some fabulous treasure or mysterious mythical object, or they surround a homeward journey, be that a mental one of self-discovery back to the person that you once was, or a physical one. It often begins with a call to action, as many of the others do, and a community in uproar, or a lost treasure, or even a missing person. The quest begins with a sense of unease, a desperation which pushes them on. Often the plot will also involve a time limit, which makes it feel a little bit more tense and gives it a little bit more tension into the actual storyline. The hero will often have to leave their home and battle to find their way back, returning a better person than when they left. These stories often involve companions of some kind who will travel with them or be picked up along the way and help them on their journey. Their unique abilities normally make victory possible, so it's a way of knowing that no one's alone. It's a moral reason for this happening. It shows the reader that no one can triumph when they're alone or unsupported. They try and take on too much themselves, and that they try not to rely on others, or in the case of like a really arrogant hero, thinking that they don't actually need help. And this shows that there's no shame in allowing friends to offer a hand. Sometimes the writer will put a sneaky on their reader and have one of the companions actually working against the hero instead of with them, being in cahoots with the enemy, if you will. This is a good way of including a plot twist in your story, but it's one that has to be managed very, very carefully. It should not be obvious that they've been actively trying to cause trouble. It should kind of come out of nowhere and like blindside the reader. But when they look back, there has to be enough evidence there to make it true. It's kind of a hard one to pull off sometimes, and it does require practice. But there's absolutely no reason to avoid doing it if that's how your story works. Once the hero and the companions have assembled, they'll venture forth. Usually they will encounter their first scary or dramatic situation, entering unknown territory, facing a monster, or even a lack of resources or food. The possibilities in this are endless. So this is where you can start making changes to your story, moving away from the formula or changing the formula a little bit to make it unique to you rather than copying what everybody else is doing. Mystical intervention along the way is also quite a common theme in these sort of books, where our hero will receive some much needed help and advice which will save the day. But then again, it doesn't always have to be mystical. If you're not doing a kind of magical voyage and return kind of journey, if it's more of one that's set in like a modern day world with no magic whatsoever, it can still be some kind of intervention by someone that will help the hero. It could be something along the lines of advice from a grandpa, or from someone that they've just met in a shop, or anything. You know, they get some kind of advice and help from an unknown and outside source. That's the point of it. When the journey's almost over, when they think that they'll make it, and they're like, we're on the home stretch, we're going to do this, we hit them with the final ordeal. All is lost, everything's chaos, or so we think. But of course, the hero will overcome the odds and win the day, because that's the whole point of the quest, honestly, is that they win it. A twist to this kind of story is the Dark Quest, and it's kind of one of my personal favourites, I think, where we see a dark, brooding, like, anti-hero who seeks to destroy an object or a person who's working on the side of good. And just when it looks like darkness will overcome the light, he's got his redemption. Or she's got her redemption. I love a sexy antisocial man who needs kicking into shape. That's kind of the theme a little bit to some of my heroes in my books. And I'm usually just the girl to write them, because I love that. But anyway, enough about me. Let's continue on with our last two plots. Tragedy and Rebirth are another two that are often partnered up for the sake of a story. Tragedy comes in many forms. It could be the loss of a parent, a lover, a child, even a whole town or city, leaving your protagonist, our hero, as the only one left to deal with the situation. They're obviously grieving, emotionally destroyed by the tragedy that they just had to deal with, but they must soldier on. Some stories just stick with the tragedy and refuse to have a happy ever after, which is fine. You know, it's your story, and no one said that it's got to have a happy, feel-good book, you know. No one said it's got to have a happy ending. But if you did want to give your hero something to strive for, a home, a light at the end of the tunnel, that's where the Rebirth plot is usually utilised. We as readers love to see something good come out of a tragedy. We love to think that no matter how bad things get, there is always hope that something good is just around the corner. Rebirth stories are always popular. Think of Christmas Carol, with the mean, skinflint Mr. Scrooge meeting three ghosts that take him on a journey of self-discovery, where he'll have to face up to the inevitable. If he continues as he is, he'll die alone and unmourned by anyone. He learns the error of his ways and wakes up the next morning as a changed man, determined to do better for everyone around him. So, there you have the 7 basic plots. And as I said, although others might disagree, I believe they're actually useful to know, perhaps to look at more in depth, especially if you have an idea for a book but you're unsure how to structure it. Identify the types of story and then study the formula, fit it all together and get writing. I once did an article explaining how the 7 basic plots all managed to fit into my first book, 2 Minutes to Midnight, before I even knew what they were. So if anyone is actually interested in reading that article, let me know in the comments or DM me, and I'll get it up online somewhere, probably on my blog on Tumblr or something like that. That's all for today. So as usual, follow me on social media if you want to come along and say hi. I love to chat. As you can tell, I'm quite a chatty person. I love to interact with people, and I love to meet new people and talk to you and share opinions. So until then, blessed be and happy writing.